Welcome to Leadership Reimagined, where game-changing conversations are reshaping the world of work. I'm Janice Ellig, the CEO and founder of Ellig Group, Executive Search Advisors, where we are reimagining search through our long-standing commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. On today's episode, Higher Purpose, I am honored to have as my guest Deanna Mulligan, CEO and Board Director of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America. Deanna was named CEO of Guardian in July 2011. Having joined Guardian in 2008 as Executive Vice President to lead the company's individual life and disability business. Active across the industry and in the community, Deanna serves on the board of directors for the American Council of Life Insurers, the New York Department of Financial Services State Insurance Advisory Board, and the Economic Club of New York. She also serves as a trustee on the board of directors for the Vanguard Group, a position she has held since 2017. And highly committed to advancing communities, she serves on the Board of Trustees for New York Presbyterian Hospital, the Partnership for New York City, Catalyst, Chief Executives for Corporate Purpose, and the Bruce Museum in Greenwich, Connecticut. Fortune named her one of the 50 most powerful women in business, and Crain's New York Business recognized her as one of the 50 most powerful women in New York. She was named 5 times by each of these organizations. Welcome, Deanna. Thank you for taking time from your very busy schedule during these very difficult times. As a CEO of a major company, I know this has been really an important time for you, and I appreciate your joining the program today.
I'm delighted to be here, Janice. Thank you for having me on your very important show.
Well, we call this episode Higher Purpose, given the title of your recent book, which is going to be available this October 27th. So congratulations.
Thank you. I'm very excited for the book to come out and for the message to hopefully be discussed broadly.
Well, I think it will be, because Higher Purpose is, and the subtitle is How Smart Companies Can Close the Skills Gap. What a great name with a double meaning, because the spelling is H-I-R-E. Was this something that you've been thinking about for a while? Because your timing is impeccable in terms of given what's happening in companies today and what's needed in terms of hiring people and their talents during these very difficult times, and what the reskilling that has to happen. Was this something that you'd been thinking about?
I've been thinking about this topic for a long time. It actually goes back to the 2008 financial crisis when I began my work at Guardian. And while Guardian wasn't impacted by the 2008 financial crisis very dramatically, as a matter of fact, we were upgraded by the rating agencies in 2008, we noticed that many of our friends and neighbors in our communities were having a very difficult time being laid off and not being able to find work. And there were a lot of, at that time, middle management, people with college degrees who had never expected to have long periods of unemployment who did. So I started thinking about why this was happening and looking into the existence of a skills gap and thinking about the future of Guardian and how we wanted to make sure that our employees could continue to work for us and we could continue to be competitive. So that was sort of the start of this book, is thinking about how is it that the skills workforce's need can change so rapidly as they did, as you recall, in the 2008 crash? How can we be prepared for that in the future so that we can make sure we don't have to lay off a large number of employees? That was really the beginning of the thinking of Higher Purpose.
So what did you start doing at Guardian then at that time? Because I know, being in search during the time, I was not doing a lot of searches, but I was really talking to people and talking them through this crisis in terms of how could they take the skills they had and retool themselves almost into other positions. So what were you doing at Guardian as you saw this unfolding with your own employees in terms of implementing, maybe not fully, but thinking about a reskilling strategy?
Well, one of the things we did at Guardian was we started to rethink our corporate responsibility and the money and the time that we were donating to various not-for-profits. And we said, what if we could really focus around reskilling and repurposing? And we ended up being a partner with many community colleges. It turned out to be one in almost every area in the country where we have an office, and helping to provide financial literacy training to community college students. And the reason we picked community college students was, first of all, they tend sometimes not to get as much attention as college students when it comes to philanthropic thinking. And secondly, community colleges we saw as really having a key role in the future of work and in helping people repurpose and reskill. So one of the things that we did at that time was we started sponsoring a course at community colleges, helping pay tuition for people to attend the course, providing employees to mentor other community college employees, and also hiring community college employees as interns, which we hadn't really done before. So this whole idea of going to a 2-year program and developing specific skills as opposed to a 4-year program was something that we supported as a way for people who, for whatever reason, couldn't do a 4-year program, and also for people who might have a degree but wanted to retrain in other areas to get productively back into the workforce.
So it isn't always about that 4-year degree, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. In Higher Purpose, you spell out why companies should commit the resources to create lifelong learning opportunities for their workers, even if it means that it's easier for employees to change jobs. What's the logic behind that strategy, and how does it benefit Guardian and other companies to take that approach?
Well, I hear that occasionally from leaders that say, well, what if we train these people and they leave? And I think that's a little bit of a false dichotomy. I always say, what if you don't train them and they don't leave? Isn't it far better to have a skilled workforce that other people are interested in and may want to hire than to have a less skilled workforce that no one wants to hire? And we have found that people appreciate very much when their company gives them the opportunity to expand their skills, and they're less likely to leave if you train them, not more likely to leave.
Right. So in retraining talent, there's a social and a moral obligation, isn't there, in society that business leaders need to take on with regard to really moving the needle for people of all levels in terms of training, whether it be through community colleges or retraining them on the job and prioritizing that reskilling. And you talk about this in the book. What are those obligations that business leaders need to take on and prioritize?
I think this idea that business is responsible for more than just shareholder bottom line profits has really come into its own. You see things like the Business Roundtable and their statement, and many organizations now that are really grabbing onto this idea of business playing a broader role in society. So I don't think it's very controversial now. In 2008, 2010, when I started thinking about it, it wasn't as common. I think that what you see now, what the shutdown that we have with COVID and the number of people who have lost jobs, this is a societal problem, and it's going to take businesses, not-for-profits, educational institutions, and government all working together to solve the problem. I don't believe that employers can just say, well, these people aren't our problem anymore, because this affects all of us.
Right. So you are on the New York City partnership. So are these issues to be addressed not just at the federal level, but say at the local level with public-private partnerships? And if so, how can companies locally forge to build more of those effective training programs locally with public-private partnerships? Is it with charities as well as with, like, New York City has a major YMCA, and they have other, not-for-profits, also the community colleges. Is that what you're talking about here?
Everyone has a role to play. We have just partnered with NPower, for example. We at Guardian partnered with NPower. They like to bring people who need to be reskilled into the workforce. So veterans, for example, and homeless people. We'd like to bring them on board as interns and apply some of our skill building programs to them. We have one, for example, that turns lay people into coders and gives them an opportunity to have a very lucrative career in IT. And that's an example of a not-for-profit working with a business. In New York City, we have several fine examples of companies working together with educational institutions. So the original P-Tech school, which IBM forged with the City of New York, basically allow high schoolers to take an extra year of high school that was equivalent to community college in their high school and go on to work at IBM. And IBM has since put together a program for other companies to use to replicate that in their local areas across the country. For Roger Ferguson at TIAA was very instrumental in working with the City University of New York and several local employers to think about putting together a minor in data science and cybersecurity for City University of New York students who were low income and probably needed some income support. And we were one of the companies that joined among many to hire these students as interns and to help contribute to funding their education and to have them have an opportunity to learn skills that could put them in a very upper income group, having come from a lower income group. So there are real opportunities in the local areas. As a matter of fact, some of the best opportunities are really local businesses partnering with their local high schools, community colleges, whatever educational institution like the YW and YMCA to put programs like this in place.
So, Deanna, I read and I hear about this, and I'm so encouraged by you and other CEOs speaking out for having, the youth have internships, get reskilling. Will this momentum continue? Will CEOs coalesce around and have a coalition where they'll continue to drive this reskilling, this training, this development?
I think you're going to see more of this because, let's face it, there aren't enough people at this moment with digital skills and automation skills for companies to go out and hire. They're going to have to hire some, but retrain a lot of their own if they're going to make their goals. And we see this particularly now in this COVID period of time when many functions, many customer service functions, many sales functions have gone online that might have taken years to develop into a fully online function by necessity went online. And the support for those functions is largely being driven by people who are in the existing companies who are learning this on the fly. We've had many companies go to a work from home model and express surprise at how successful they've been and how quickly their employees adapted. So I think that's an example of employees learning new skills inside the company to help the company at a time when it was critical. And I think companies and CEOs have learned from that and said, hey, our employees can do more and we can do more digitally and virtually than we thought we could. And maybe we have more skills in the organization than we knew we had.
It's interesting because I've heard so many say if we'd planned for this, it would have taken a year and a half. And we didn't have the time to plan, but we did it virtually overnight, right? And it happened. So creativity happened. It was the mother of invention, happened because you had to do it. Let's talk about the insurance industry specifically. That's an industry that has not always moved as quickly, but has had to because of COVID-19. What are the specific challenges in this industry in terms of the future of work?
Well, I think we have some of the same challenges that all industries face, and that we are trying to become more and more efficient so that we can deliver more and better service and products to more people at a lower price. And I think that's everyone's goal right now. And certainly digital and automation are two ways to do that. The insurance industry is sort of known for having, big back offices full of people doing calculations and people answering the phone and lots of paper. We actually eliminated paper about 2 years ago. We were fortunate in that we moved to a new location in New York City, and we just made a rule that said, unless it's regulatory required, you're not allowed to keep paper. And people got rid of, in a very compliant way, lots of paper and learned to do things online and digitally. So we were prepared for the current shutdown in that we were already operating digitally, but many people have expressed surprise at how little paper they see when they come to our offices. There's an example. Another example is we have wonderful people who provide customer service to our clients via telephone. But during the COVID shutdown, a lot of our clients had questions about their benefits, needed help, needed answers, and we couldn't hire enough people fast enough to help them. So we pushed into service some AI tools that, as you mentioned earlier, we probably normally would have taken a much longer ramp up time, and we pushed them in quickly because we wanted to keep up our customer service, our great customer service scores, and our customers ended up liking them. and using them. And they had a very high adoption rate. Of course, they had the chance to opt out to talk to a person, but many of them ended up using the automated agent to help them. And so as we look forward, we have a program to retrain some of our frontline customer service people into coders who will ultimately be able to do automation and help us automate some of the customer service function. We don't envision ever eliminating in-person customer service, but we are going to support it with automation. And some of the people who are doing customer service today, we'd like to have them retrained to help do the automation. So that's a great example of, I think, innovation that you might not realize would be going on behind the scenes at an insurance company.
Well, over the past 3 years, you brought in a number of people from other industries and with technology backgrounds and digital backgrounds. And I've visited your new offices, and you would think you were walking into a very high-tech, fintech, technology-driven company. It's very, very impressive. So congratulations on that. And I've seen what you've done. So really move the needle for the insurance industry in a very digital way. I want to remind our audience that you're listening to Deanna Mulligan, Higher Purpose. Deanna Mulligan is the Chief Executive Officer of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America. The topics we cover, like today's, are all current, and a new topic with a new game changer is released on the third Thursday of every month. This is a great way to stay current on relevant issues happening around us. Now let's return to Deanna Mulligan. Deanna, shortly after 9/11, you chose to take a 2-year break in your career. Why and how did you do this, and how did it impact you going forward? And would you say that this is a good thing for executives to do?
Well, around the time of 9/11, I was in Manhattan for 9/11, lost a few people, as many New Yorkers did, lost a few people whom I knew in the towers. I also had a family member who became quite ill quite suddenly and passed away, leaving 3 small children. My husband had also been in an accident and was home recovering. So I had seen a lot of death and destruction. I was 39 years old, and it seems hard to believe now, but at that point, I think I hadn't really come to terms with my mortality. And all of a sudden, all of these events happened within a few month time period. And I said to myself, wow, I could die tomorrow. Am I really doing what I'm supposed to do and what I was meant to do? And is there something else I should be doing? I was very inspired by many of the first responders at 9/11 who just showed great bravery and the very heroic actions of the New York City Police and Fire Department, which we will never forget. And of course, the great hospitals like New York Presbyterian and all the others who opened their doors and worked around the clock to save people. And I said, am I on the path I'm supposed to be on? So I decided to take some time to think about that. And I thought I was going to take 6 months off. I did go around and interview some people I had known and respected who had taken career breaks or sabbaticals. And I said, tell me how it went. Tell me what I should do. Tell me how I could be successful. And everyone said 6 months isn't enough. Some people said you'll need a year. Some people said 2 years. And I said, oh, I don't believe that. I couldn't even imagine it. I ended up taking 2 years, and it was just the right amount of time. And in that time, I really solidified what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it, what values were important to me, and kind of recommitted to making sure that everything I do from a career perspective and every organization that I join is committed to making, the world a better place. It's cliched, but for me, it was very important. I can't, tell everybody that taking a 2-year break was the right thing to do, but certainly it was the right thing for me. I'm quite sure that I would not have ended up as CEO of Guardian had I not taken that break. And there were many people who told me I was crazy to take a break and that I'd never be able to get back on the track, and that it was especially difficult for a woman to take a break. And why would a woman, especially a woman with no children, take a break? And I had to kind of block out those things and think about what it was that was really important to me and that I really wanted to do. Ultimately, ending up at Guardian was exactly what I wanted to do, because Guardian is a values-based company that is owned by its policyholders. Many people don't know, but we're a Fortune 250 company, even though we're not public. And we're really set up to do the right thing for our policyholders, but also for our communities and for our people. And I ended up in the right place. But it was really a result of a lot of thought about what I wanted the next 10 years or my time on earth to look like.
That's so important, for one's legacy, right? Because we are on this planet for just a very short time. And I've worked with you and I've seen the people that you've hired. You're very values driven. And it's really interesting that you've written this book, Higher Purpose, because everything that you're touching, the companies that you have affiliated yourself with, boards and such, they all have a higher purpose, don't they?
Yes, they do. And, I'm very, very fortunate and feel very humbled to be a part of these other organizations on whose board I've been asked to serve. Because, yes, the one thing they have in common is they do all have a higher purpose, and they're fairly forthright about that higher purpose.
In 2014, you were also appointed by the White House to serve on the President's Advisory Council on Financial Capability for Young Americans. Here again, higher purpose. And the council was created to advise the president on ways to help young Americans get the skills and knowledge that they need to pursue successful careers and contribute to the nation's economy. So again, it's the same theme. And at that time, you were 3 years into being CEO of The Guardian. What did you learn from this experience, and what advice would you give to young Americans in understanding, their needs, their wants, their power of saving, the benefit of managing their own money, and also, going into their careers?
Again, it was a great honor to serve on that commission for President Obama and with so many wonderful and talented people, both from the administration, from the not-for-profit world, and other CEOs of large and small companies. And while we did issue a report and start some initiatives to help college students and high school students and young people think very important questions like, should I go to college? If I do go to college, how can I apply for financial aid? How can I make sure that I can afford to repay the loans, and so on? But one of the big things the commission learned was also that a major financial obstacle facing these young Americans was finding a job, whether it was finding a job after coming out of community college or coming out of a four-year college, or in some sad cases, dropping out of a four-year college and having to go to work to pay off their student loans. One thing that all these groups had in common was trying to find a satisfying career. So a lot of what I saw in the work of that commission is, again, reflected here in the Higher Purpose book, and that is, we need to make sure as companies we're doing everything we can to help young people develop the skills they need to have a satisfying career. And it doesn't have to be through a four-year college or a community college. It can be through some of the programs like those we have at Guardian, where we take high school students as interns and put them, for example, into a code academy situation where they learn how to code to help us deliver more of that technology that we're going to need for the future.
Right. So you talk about this credentialing systems that is skills focused, and like skills passports and stackable credentials, right? And so then they may get that from you or another employer, and then when they change jobs, that agency or that search firm, if they get to a certain level, needs to look at those stackable skills, right? And to see how that might apply for a different employer. So I might have to look at that candidate differently in the future. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct, Janice. The Business Roundtable has done a lot of work on credentialing and stackable skills. And I think there's a great realization now among employers that we need to look at candidates differently in the future and hire differently. And we need to look more at a skills base than a degree, because anything learned in a degree, even 5 or 10 years ago, there are new skills that have come into play since then. And we want to make sure that people can learn and know how to learn, and we can teach them some of the skills they need. But I think it's really important for people to have that learning mindset. And also, as we move forward, trying to create more inclusive and more diverse organizations, one of the ways that we can do that is to look more at skills than at background or college degree.
Right. So the Dells of the world, Michael Dell and Branson and whatever, may not have your MBA Stanford degree, but will there be more like them that we need to look at in the future?
Absolutely. I think what we're going to see in the future is people with the skills and talent and the ability and desire to learn are going to move ahead, even if they don't have a college degree, much more easily than they might have in the past.
So the technological advancements are changing so rapidly, right? As employers are looking at balancing the needs of today, reskilling their workforce while increasing capabilities, retaining employees, yet under the pressure of costs, how do they balance that all at the same time and then look to recruiters to fill the needs that they have today? I mean, it's like balancing a lot of plates in the air at the same time. How do you keep it all spinning?
Well, I mean, that is the job of the CEO and the leadership team of the organization, but it's also been a hallmark of great organization in the past is keeping a number of balls in the air at the same time. So I don't think this problem is any different in that regard than problems we've faced in the past. I mean, let's face it, it's expensive to lay people off. Most companies give severance. It's expensive to have severance. It's very hard on the quote unquote survivors in the company when there's a big layoff. The people who remain are sad. Sometimes they're angry. Sometimes innovation is stifled because people are afraid to take risks. There are definitely community impacts of laying off a number of people. So the cost is there, whether you keep the employees and retrain them or lay them off, and how much better for the organization and for society at large to try to keep the employees and retrain them. And retraining does not have to be expensive. Community college tuition is one of the great bargains in this country. And one of the things that we found at Guardian is our employees are more than willing to volunteer to mentor one another. And so mentoring programs inside the company don't cost anything, and they tend to raise morale and produce better results.
I think that's a key, isn't it, to really people feeling like somebody's really helping them. It's like a tutor, for a child who somebody says, well, they can't really do it. Well, they can do it, but you just have to show them the way. And so in companies where they're willing to put in that time, I agree with you. It's so expensive to lay off, and it really hurts morale. So why wouldn't you put in the time to mentor somebody and say, yes, you are good at math. You are good at coding. Let me show you the way and how to make it happen. And when you take the time to do that, it works. So that reskilling is much less expensive and a morale booster in so many ways. So your book is going to show us the way to make that happen, right, Deanna?
We have many examples in the book of companies that have done just that. But Janice, I think, I'd say a word for you as a recruiter. I think people like you have a huge role to play too, because you have the skills and the abilities of assessing people and assessing jobs and saying, here's a match, this isn't a match. And I would imagine in the future, firms like yours are going to do what I know you're already doing and will probably do more of, is in addition to providing recruiting for companies, to help companies build those internal programs and find those internal matches of skills.
Yeah, I think, Deanna, it is educating people who are hiring individuals to think outside of the box. Not always that all those educational credentials, but the stackable skills that they will be needing. So many of my clients will be getting your book for their holiday gift. So let me ask you, what is your vision of the workplace in 5 years?
Well, Janice, I think we're already seeing clues to that today. I mean, obviously, what past events of the year have taught us is it's really impossible to foresee the future in a perfect way. But I think given where we sit today, you'll see many more things being done virtually, much more remote work, more, I think clients are always going to demand a high level of service. Some of that can be in person, some of it will be over the phone, but an increasing amount of it will also be digital. I think we will see more companies working in a very agile way. We've already trained our entire workforce on, the agile methodology. And I think you'll see more and more of that. And we, as you mentioned earlier, companies have been, I think, a bit surprised at how quickly their workforce adapted during the shutdown to the situation we faced. And I think we can build on that going forward and say our people are a lot more creative and resourceful than we might have imagined. And so let's push to see what we can do, how creative we can be, how imaginative we can be about the future of work. We do a lot of discussions with our employees and a lot of surveying and a lot of listening about how they're feeling and their engagement level. And what we've heard during this period of time when we've been largely work from home is that while it doesn't work for some people, and clearly schooling from home and working from home at the same time has been an issue, that people like the option of not having to commute to the office every day. And they like the productivity that they have when they can solve business problems, take a few minutes to solve a personal problem, a child problem, work a few minutes later at night. To really be on their own schedule has been enormously freeing for them. So I think we're going to see much more of that in the future.
And so as we're coming to a close here, in terms of there's so much great advice in your book, what would you say to our listeners in terms of several items that they could implement tomorrow?
Well, first of all, I think developing a learning culture and a learning mindset inside your organization is really important. At Guardian, we started a year and a half ago with Leader Learning Day, and that has morphed into Learning Month, where we really help people to understand how many different resources are available to them to learn new skills. And I think it's not an expensive thing to do, and it's a very important thing to do. So that would be a first easy step to take. A second step, if you haven't done it already, is to reach out to the resources in your community. You mentioned, Janet, the WISE, which are great resources for reskilling and retraining and helping to find new candidates. I would also add that reach out to your local high schools and community colleges and talk about what it is you need in terms of skills and what you see over the next 5 years. And you'd be surprised at how adept they can be at helping you find students, develop curriculum, even in some cases delivering curriculum to your employees. Again, something you could do right away that doesn't cost very much. And then the third thing is, examine your own mindset and the mindset of your executives and really do some thoughtful planning. Are we ready for the new future of work? Are we looking at candidates in the right way? Are we assessing skills instead of just backgrounds and pedigrees and degrees? And are we ready to open up the organization to people who might not have all of the credentials that are on our strict list of criteria, but could certainly develop them if we gave them a little bit of a boost? It's really a way to bring some creativity, to bring some diversity to the organization, and to make everyone feel included. I think those three things are things you could do tomorrow at fairly low cost.
And with the social issues in our society today, it's so important to be doing. Deanna, what is the best piece of advice as a leading CEO that you have been in corporate America that you've ever received, and how has it shaped you?
The best piece of advice I've ever received is feedback is a gift. Seek out feedback. If people are willing to take the time and energy to provide you with feedback, listen, thank them. You don't have to agree with everything, but if you take the time to seek it out, you're going to learn a lot. It's really hard to move forward in your career and in life in general without feedback.
Deanna Mulligan, it's been an honor to know you, to represent you in the market. You are just an outstanding leader. I know that you're going to continue this momentum of really making the workforce better, and with other CEOs are going to make a difference in our society. I want to thank you so much for joining us today, sharing your very impressive career, but the impact that you've made and the insights from your book, which we are all going to buy and we're going to read, Higher Purpose, How Smart Companies Can Close the Skills Gap. It'll be available on Amazon and wherever books are sold, releasing on October 27th. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Janet. It's an honor to be one of your distinguished guests, and it's been a pleasure working with you all these years, and I look forward to many more.
We're going to continue to work together in many ways. I know you have many more things to do, so more to come from Deanna Mulligan. And thank you to our audience for tuning in to another of the game-changing conversations on Leadership Reimagined. You can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or visit our website at ellagroup.com. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes of Leadership Reimagined, game-changing conversations, released on the third Thursday of each month and available on my website. Thank you for joining us today with Deanna Mulligan.